As no-code continues to evolve, we see more and more different options out there in the marketplace that are different but similar to Airtable in a number of ways. In this video, I want to do a comparison with one of those tools that has recently caught our attention. I'm talking about Knack. Knack is another no-code database type of tool, very similar to Airtable in a number of respects, but it has some distinct differences that I think you're gonna love, especially if you're an Airtable user who has struggled with their pricing and business model. So if learning more about Knack is of interest and doing a little bit of a comparison between Knack and Airtable, stick around and let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Gareth. I'm the owner here at Gap Consulting, and it's our mission to help you to get organized and automated with no-code tools. And today we're going to be talking about a new no-code tool that has recently popped on our radar. I'm talking about Knack, doing a little bit of a comparison between that and Airtable, and I'm going to be building a little bit in Knack so that you can see how quickly it comes together. And we're also going to deep dive on its pricing model, which I think you are going to love, especially if you've been frustrated with Airtable's pricing model in the past. So before we get into that, I first want to join you to follow along with me in Knack. I will be including our link below, which you can go ahead and use to get started on a free trial. And also is going to show a little bit of love back to the channel, so thank you for that. And without further ado, let's go ahead and hop on into my screen and get started. So here I am inside of Knack, brand new in here. You can see I'm on my own 14-day free trial, testing this out relatively for the first time here. I took it out for a quick spin, but nothing major. So we're going to start by building a brand new app. It's going to be super simple. I'm talking projects, linking that to tasks. I'm not going to build a similar comparison inside of Airtable because if you're on this channel, you've probably seen me do that dozens of times, if not more. So let's go ahead and hop on in here. I am going to start from scratch. But before I do, I want to point out that you can import a CSV file and also start from a sample app. So very similar to a lot of the other no-code tools where we can just take existing data and get started, or we can start with some samples. But in our case, we're gonna just roll the dice, start from scratch and see what we can do. So it's taking just a moment to build out our app. And an app is the term that Knack uses for a database. Because Knack is much more than just a database, as you're gonna see, it also has the front end component and automations all baked in. We're gonna get to that in just a moment. So first I have to start with adding my first table, and maybe I would find this a little bit confusing if this was my first attempt at building a no-code database. But thankfully I've built in Airtable a lot, and I'm very familiar with tables and how they link and all of that noise. So let's go ahead and just start with our first table, which is going to be projects. Now again, it's going to ask me, do you just want to upload a CSV file? But note that I can go by template here, or I can also start from scratch. So I'm going to do from scratch, and I'll just call something here projects, and I will add this. Now when I'm inside of here, the layout is going to look very different from Airtable. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to see a list of my tables. You can see we just added projects here. Now I'm also going to have the ability to enable users and to enable customer payments. Now we're going to get in detail on these in just a minute, but I want to point out that we don't have to create a table for users, and I also want to tease the fact that the way that Knack treats users is way, way different than what Airtable does, and I think you're going to love it. But for now, we've got to build our app, right? We have to get our data schema built first. So first things first, I'm in my projects table here, and right now I just have a project name. So let's add some more fields to this. I can do that by just adding a field right here. Maybe a project also needs a start date. So here on the left-hand side, you can see all the different fields that I can add. I've got your basic ones like number, currency, auto increment, but also those calculated fields like equation, text formula, etc. In our case, I'm just going to go with the date time field here, pop this in. I'm going to call this the start date of project. And I can make this a required field. I can add a description, and look at all the additional granularity in control I have. What format do I want here in the date format? Is there a specific default date? I can go with a specific date. I can say none, or I can apply the current date as the specific date. And in terms of the format, I can go into hours, minutes, military time, or I can just say ignore time altogether. In our case, I just need a date, so I will ignore the time. And then with calendar options, just use a simple date time or add options like repeat and end time to use with a calendar. This is obviously a lot more robust, so I'm going to skip it for this quick demo, and we're going to go with the no, just give me the simple date and time, and we're going to add that field. So just like that, I've created a new field, but again, the difference here is that in Airtable, fields are going across on a spreadsheet. We're talking about columns, and here they're kind of listed out almost as rows. So we have to keep it in the back of our minds what we're dealing with. These are fields, and of course, if we think about it in terms of records, we can flip on over into this next section. So I'm still inside of my projects table, and now I've built my two fields, and I can start adding data to this particular table. So I can give a project a name. I can call this project 1. And you'll notice that my default date's set up with today. I'm recording this as of the 7th, but maybe I want to say the start date of this project was a few days ago, and I create my first record inside of my table. Now I can add additional records here. I'll call this project 2. And again, I've got my start date of project, and I will add one more because I want a third record, and this will be project 3. And I'll set a different date here. Let's go and pick out to the 11th, and there we go. Now you'll notice that I have this view in here, but I'm really looking at the back-end guts of Knack. So I can adjust stuff like I can rank it in chronological order by clicking on the start date. I'll click again to flip it around. So I'm just sorting my data in terms of how I want to view it on the back end. But this is not how people will actually interact with my data once my app goes live. Now, the next step here is to build our second table. And of course, we have to implement a linked table relationship. Otherwise, you won't necessarily get to see how we can link things so easily. So we can start by just creating a new table here. Again, going from scratch, and this will be my tasks table, and I will add that right here. Now, similarly, I can flip between my two tables. Here I am inside of the fields, and so I've got my task name, and I probably want to have a task due date as well, so let's add the field. I'll have my task due date. Let's find the date again. Settings, I have to go through one more time, but here I'll say task due date. And I will have my default. I will again ignore time. These settings are just fine. Let's add the field. Now it's time to connect my two different pieces. I have tasks that pertain to or relate to a project. So let's build that linked relationship. Here's where I manage my connections. I can add a new connection from my tasks table. And when I select this, it's going to say, where do you want to connect this to? And of course, I see my different options for tables that I've already created here. I want to connect tasks to projects and click next. Now inside of here, and I love this, I get the opportunity to establish this relationship. Is this a one-to-many, a many-to-many, or a one-to-one? What that means is, can a task connect to one project or many projects? A task, when we create it, is in relation to one project, so I keep this at 1. A project can connect to many tasks because a project will consist of multiple things that need to get done. So this is a one-to-many relationship. But the fact that Knack brings this up right here, I think makes us better database designers and developers because it's forcing us to think of that connection from both sides of the equation when we establish the connection. Now I'm going to add the connection, and now I have this linked relationship here in my tasks connecting to projects. And if I back up and I go over to my projects table here, you'll see that projects are linking to tasks, and that is visible right here in my connections. So now we have this linked relationship. Now let's talk about how people can actually access this data. I can set up pages here, and this is similar to an Airtable interface in the sense that this is how people are going to interact with the app that we built. So I can add my first page. And I have to first determine if this is going to be public or protected. Now, protected is going to be enabled for only the users that I have established for my application. So I haven't gotten to that just yet. So right now we're going to keep this public, and I will continue here. Now it's going to ask me the name of the page. New page is just fine. I will add my page. Now I can add these different views to my page. So I might want to bring out, let's say, a list. Maybe I want to bring out a list of my projects. And so here it is, all the different projects that I have. I can add additional information here. I can add an additional link on this interface that says, now allow them to edit each record with a form. So users can log in, view my projects here, and if I enable this, they have a little opportunity to then click here and edit the information on this project. Pretty cool. Next, I can also add a details page so that if people want to click in and view the details of a project, they can do that as well. So I have all of these options right here available for me right inside of this page designer. Let's say I'm happy with this. I want to be able to allow people to edit with a form, but not go in and see the details. I will hit continue. And here on the last piece, I'm confirming and adding. I can further edit this after I add it, but these are the first few steps it's taking me through. And of course, it wants to know the name of this. Projects is just fine. And let's go ahead and add that list. So now this list component is available on my app, but I can go further than this by drilling into the other elements here, and I can bring other stuff into this page, right? So I can add other elements as well. Click on Add View. Maybe I want to bring in some static information or a report. Let's say I want to get a little more detailed in how I'm looking at stuff and I need a pivot table. I mean, I can't imagine why I would need a pivot table for projects and tasks, but you get the idea. I can bring all this information in here and I can see, or rather create, an experience for my users right here in the app. Knack was built with users in mind, and the very design of it enables this to go live immediately. So now that I'm here, let's say I'm happy with this report, I add it, I'm enjoying the way I've built this page, I can now view the live version of this in my application. This is currently live right now. I can click on this. Remember, I said this was available to everyone. So there it is. If I want to edit this project name, let's go in. I want to edit this. This is not named Project 1 anymore. It's now Project 5. I click Submit. I can go back to the projects here, and you see that it's been moved down here because they're in a certain order, and it's been renamed. So live information, live data accessible right there inside of my Knack page. That's not all. Let's flip back now into the actual data schema and talk about these additional things. So the way that Knack handles users is very different from Airtable. The key takeaway here is that you are not charged for a user in Knack. And so I can just enable users, and it basically creates a new table inside of Knack, users, and I can then connect those users to all the different parts of my application. So therefore, giving people the access and information that they need inside of my app. Now, furthermore, I can also assign roles to my users. So folks can have different roles, and different roles can have different permissions and visibility inside of the app, which then gives me the functionality that I would get from, let's say, an advanced Airtable interface, or maybe building something in Airtable and having Softer as a front end. I no longer need this functionality because it's all built inside of Knack. So that's amazing, but that's not all. I can come back here and also look at payments, this other key feature, which allows me to enable e-commerce on my app. So I can now charge my users and store their payment methods for future payments. So if I want to build an app that I'm going to charge users to have access to, Knack is the obvious choice. It's all synced up right here, and it's all under one roof. So I love these features especially, but it's now time to jump into pricing, and we have to do as close to an apples to apples comparison as we can between Knack and Airtable. Now, I want to preface this by saying, you know, I'm an avid Airtable user if you've watched this channel for any amount of time. I adore Airtable, but the number one thing that drives me nuts about Airtable is their pricing model, their business model. It is in conflict with you, the consumer, because they are charging per user. And when you think about the way a database should work, the natural inclination, at least for me, would be to assume that I'm going to be charged based on the amount of information, the amount of data that I'm storing in that particular database. So Why am I charged by user in Airtable? And in fact, what that winds up doing is making me less likely to invite new members of my team to share that Airtable app because I don't want to drive up my bill. But Knack blows all this out of the water, and it handles things the way they should have been handled from the first place, and that is by charging for data, by charging for information. Let's take a look at the Knack pricing. Here is Knack's basic pricing. So we see that they have a starter plan with a very small amount of records, granted. This is 20,000 records, 2 gigs of storage, and allows you to build 3 apps. Now realistically, how many apps do you need to build? How many different key apps are running your business and your workflows? Generally speaking, it's not more than 5. So 3 is a pretty decent amount to start. Although I will agree that 20,000 records is probably a little low. But the key takeaway here is Knack is charging us for the amount of data, not for our users. So you can have as many users as you want accessing your application, and your bill will never be more than $39 a month. And that, my friend, is a game-changing approach to no-code pricing. You'll notice that here on the corporate plan, I can go up to 125,000 records. I'm getting 50 gigs of storage, way more apps than I'm ever going to use. 25? There's no way I would use that many as a regular business. And there I go, a flat bill of $179 a month, the end. But there's a lot more. I can go to larger plans. I can go to larger plans and spend up to $1,000 a month and get 1.5 million records and 500 gigs of storage. So Knack is solving this problem between the free Airtable plan and the enterprise Airtable plan. We all know there's a lot of space in the middle there that Airtable is not doing the best job of grabbing because of the fact that you've got, let's say, a small business with 10 people on a pro plan for Airtable. So let's flip over and take a look and compare here. On Airtable's website, if I'm looking at a pro plan, which is going to give me 50,000 records per base and 20 gigs of attachment space, I'm paying $25 a month. If I've got 10 people on my team, that's a $250 bill. If I've got 20 people on my team and I'm adding them all to Airtable, it's a $500 a month bill. So what would that cost me? The comparison of that in Knack, 50,000 records, I have to go back to the basic pricing. Here I am, my pro version, 50,000 records, 10 gigs of storage, 8 apps, unlimited users for $80 a month. Compare that to the $500 a month I'd be spending for Airtable. So here is where I think you will agree that Knack is doing something really, really right. Add to that the fact that I can also enable payments for my app and share it with external users who might not be a member of my organization. I can actually build applications and sell them to people who would actually need to use them, and I can charge them per month. That is what makes Knack special, and that is why we're talking about it here today. I hope you got a ton of value from this video and consider giving Knack a shot. Please, again, use the link below that we will include wherever you found this video. And in the meantime, keep on building.